Okay, so let's talk about tariffs. We've talked about tariffs enough, and now there's been a sweeping change because the US Supreme Court, the American Supreme Court, has delivered a massive blow to President Donald Trump and his entire tariff strategy, which he's been using for over a year now to have his way across the world. Now, in this ruling, the court has said that Trump has illegally used emergency powers to impose tariffs without approval of Congress. This decision has consequences not just in the US but the entire world for the global economy and specifically for India because we've just negotiated a trade deal. So we're going to, in this video, take a look at what the US court has said, what their reasons were, what happens to the Indo-US trade deal from what we know so far, and how much tariff is India going to have to pay? Will anybody get their money back? That's another question. So before we start, an appeal to you to like and share and subscribe, and of course sign up for our membership. If you can sign up for our membership, that will help us. I find the comment section fascinating, and I know we've had some questions about why you're doing so many stories globally and not so many stories India, because things are happening globally right now that have a direct impact on us in India. And I tend to pick stories where I believe that there is enough material there to sort of break it down in an entire video. But I really do want to hear from you on what you think. If there are different stories you'd like us to do, please let us know, and it'll be our pleasure to do that as well. Okay, so this is what has happened in the last 24 hours. The US Supreme Court struck down President Trump's global tariffs that he had imposed. And he imposed it using a national emergency law. And the ruling has said that he has exceeded his authority in doing so. The court upheld challenges that was so basically, once these tariffs were brought in, they were businesses in the US and 12 different American states that took the Trump administration to court. And it was those challenges that have now been upheld, saying basically that the tariffs were unconstitutional. As reported by Reuters, the ruling effectively opens the doors to billions of dollars in potential refund claims that businesses can claim from the American government. So basically, tariffs that have been paid that they're going to perhaps ask the government to refund back to them. Well, let's take it step by step, right? So, at the heart of this case was a 1977 law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or EPA. Trump used that law to justify the tariffs on almost every country on the globe. And basically, he claimed that trade deficits and foreign dependence was amounting to a national emergency. And that is the argument that the Supreme Court has rejected. Now, these are the reasons that the Supreme Court has given. One, that the law itself doesn't mention tariffs in any way. The EPA law allows the president to regulate importation during emergencies, but it does not have a statute that has the words tariff or duty or levy or tax. So the court has said that the omission is legally significant. So basically what it does is that it tells the government that in case there's some kind of emergency, you can import or you can regulate import, but it doesn't actually mention a tariff. Second, no president in the history of the United States has ever used EPA this way before. Reuters reports that previous presidents used it for sanctions, for asset freezes and embargoes, but never for broad-based revenue-raising tariffs. And that, that precedent, or the lack of the president, apparently worked against Donald Trump. Number three, the tariffs are different from other emergency tools. The court said that tariffs directly raise money for the US Treasury, and under the constitution in that country, that power to tax only belongs to Congress and not unilaterally with the president of the country. Basically what they're saying is that if you are going to tax something, anything, it's something that the Congress has to decide, which is their government, but not the president unilaterally. And fourth, accepting Trump's argument would actually give the president sweeping unchecked power for the future. And the court warned that under the administration's interpretation, the president could then impose unlimited tariffs on any country for any duration without congressional approval, and that sort of authority cannot be granted. And finally, majority relied on the major questions doctrine, which basically says that major economic and political decisions must be cleared by the lawmakers. In fact, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, and this is a direct quote, he said, "Our task today is to decide only whether or not the power to regulate importation embraces the power to impose tariffs, and it does not." End quote. So basically, President Donald Trump lost a case that says that he can't impose the kind of tariffs he's been imposing for the last 1 year. And interestingly, it's a case that was fought against him by small businesses in the US. The case was in fact argued by an Indian origin American lawyer called Neil Katyal. According to PTI and Business Today, Katyal argued that tariffs are a form of taxation, and under the US Constitution, the power to tax lies exclusively with the Congress. After the verdict, Katyal told MSNBC that basically this case demonstrated how the American system can still check the most powerful man on earth, even a sitting president in executive power, that the American courts and the average American citizen still has power to check the government. Now, what happens to this globally, right? Trump's tariffs were central to his global trade war that he started, where he was raising the prices on goods like furniture, electronics, apparel. According to economists that have been quoted in Reuters and BBC News, the prices will not fall quickly in America because companies had already adjusted their supply chains to all of this. But legally, there is a constitutional line. Presidents cannot impose global taxes without Congress's approval. And this is a massive thing. This changes, the environment that we've been living in for the last 1 year, globally at least. And remember, Trump has repeatedly not only sort of arbitrarily imposed, tariffs, he's also used it in national security matters. He's used it in negotiating other deals. He's used it when it comes to, he threatened to impose tariffs on Europe for standing by Greenland and Denmark, you'll remember. He's imposed tariffs to get countries to stop buying Russian oil. India was one of those countries that he targeted. He has repeatedly claimed credit for a ceasefire between India and Pakistan using trade tariffs. Of course, India has never confirmed that, but he has used tariffs in more than just trade. He's used it for other reasons as well. So this is the environment the world has been living in for the last 1 year. And the US Constitution now has changed that environment. How did Trump react? Well, he was not happy. According to reports, he said refunds will not come easily. He warned that the issue will be tied up in courts for years. But he also, in typical Trump style, he criticized the Republican judges appointed by him, saying that they were fools and they were unpatriotic. But let's take a look at what happens now. Now, within hours of this verdict, Trump signed a new executive order imposing a blanket 10% global tariff on everybody. According to the White House fact sheet, this tariff will take effect on the 24th of February. It will apply for 150 days initially. And some sectors, pharmaceuticals, US, Mexico, Canada trades are exempt. But right now, that 10% applies. Trump's trade secretary has said the move will result in little change to the overall tariff revenue in 2026. But that's that revenue to the government. But I mean, in India, we're stopping to say, okay, so what does this mean? We just spent all of this time negotiating a trade deal with the US, paying 50% tariffs to the US. Now, we were waiting for details of the trade deal that we have just negotiated before we even get that. Now there is a new twist in the tail. India is among the most affected countries because of this, because we are among the largest export markets. Now, India will, according to Times of India and Hindustan Times, face a 10% global tariff. However, Trump has said that the IndiaUS trade framework that was negotiated will stay and India will ultimately pay 18% tariff. So he actually gave a soundbite today or last night where he basically said that no. India was not paying any tariff. Now they will pay 18% tariff and we will not pay any tariff to India. So this deal is a great deal and this deal stays. But we don't know how that happens, given what their Supreme Court has said. The White House official told reporters that 10% will stay until authority is invoked. So in practical terms, it's 10% now. It's 18%, which is Trump's stated goal. Again, on the deal, Trump has said nothing changes. In India, the opposition leaders are starting to ask questions. Congress leader Jairam Ramesh and P. Chidambaram have questioned why India was in such a rush to close a deal when this case was already pending before the Supreme Court. Shouldn't we have waited for the Supreme Court ruling? Chidambaram warned that the US has already extracted concessions from India, including energy commitments and tariff reductions, without guaranteeing long term relief. So basically, this is what the opposition is arguing. When Trump had put a 50% tariff on us and we were paying that 50% tariff, now the Supreme Court has said that that 50% tariff is illegal, and so now it's gone. But we agreed to an 18% tariff in that trade deal. So that 18% tariff trade deal is perfectly legal because it is not a unilateral tariff imposed by Trump. So Trump says the deal remains, although the reason for us to cut that deal is now gone. And the opposition is saying, why don't you just wait for the Supreme Court ruling? So legally, the deal remains in place, but it is now politically and diplomatically exposed. So it depends on what India's response is. We haven't received too much of a response from the Indian government. Union Minister Prahlad Joshi has said a reaction will be given by the Commerce Ministry and the Ministry of External Affairs. So he's basically said, I've read in the media that the US top court has given some sort of judgment. Indian government will study that, and whether a reaction needs to be given will be given by the Commerce Ministry or the MEA, not by me. This is the only response we have so far from anyone in government. Let's talk about the refunds also. This is where expectations need to be made clear. So what are the refunds? US importers, so basically they imported something, they paid a tariff on it, and that tariff was paid to the government. There's a possibility that they will go to court and file claims in US courts demanding those refunds of that money. It's not automatic. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, in his dissent, and he gave a dissent, so it was a 6-3 ruling, he was among the three, he warned that the refunds process will become a mess. Now, will Indian companies get any refunds? Perhaps no. According to reports, they're not entitled to receive any refunds because technically the payments were made by American companies. So refunds will not be compensated to Indian companies, nor will any sort of sunk investments be given. One economist, Ajit Ranade, has told India Today that the tariffs are ruled as illegal. There's no mechanism to reverse the economic damage that has already been done. The bottom line, though, is that this is a massive constitutional check on presidential power. It's taken a while. These were cases that were filed last year. It's taken a while to come, but it has come. It doesn't end Trump's tariff war, but it does block him and will perhaps make him think again before he does something like this. For India, the tariffs are lower, but they're not gone. The refunds and compensations are not going to come. Long negotiations will perhaps still lie ahead. So it's interesting to find out whether the Indian government is going to go back to the negotiating table at this point with Trump and say, we want to renegotiate, because that 50% tariff, the 100% tariff that he was threatening the world with is now gone. He cannot impose those tariffs legally from his country anymore. So like in the world of Donald Trump, which is his world really, we all just live in it, there's no quiet moment even on a Saturday evening. But this is the breakdown of everything we know so far. And we're obviously going to be watching this very closely because it is not done. Leave us a comment in the comment section on what you believe. Do you believe the Indian government rushed into this? Because see, had they not agreed to the 18% when they did, we would still be paying the 50%. It was a toss-up. Everything is a give and a take. Let me know what you think, though. I'm curious to know what you think.